On today's episode, the Chicago Blackhawks made their first announcement in a couple of weeks, as unfortunately, both defenseman Jake McCabe and forward Jalen Luypen will be forced to miss the start of the regular season. And then I'll also get into a preview of what the rosters could look like for both the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase and for Blackhawks training camp. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Today is Tuesday, September 13th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at Jack Bushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, then please be sure to go and show some support first by following the podcast, which will only take a quick couple of seconds and will help me out tremendously. Be sure to go and rate the show with 5 stars if you like what you're hearing today as well. And if you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts or through Spotify, then feel free to go and leave me a review. I always greatly appreciate getting feedback from all you wonderful listeners out there. If you're a longtime listener of the show, a consistent listener, and you like what you're hearing, please go and let me know in the review section. And the best part about it all is that it's 100% for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, whether that's through Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, etc. It's all 100% for free. And if you go and follow the show right now, then you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And if you're not already watching the video version of today's episode, then you got to be sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, because folks, every episode moving forward is going to have a video uploaded to YouTube as well. So if you haven't done so yet, please go and help the boy out by subscribing to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate all the support I can get. Take the 2 seconds that it takes to go and subscribe to the channel. Also, please go and smash the like button down below for me as well, and comment as to which Blackhawks prospect you are looking forward to seeing the most, not only at the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, but also during training camp. Who is going to be the most impressive prospect invited to Blackhawks training camp? And last, go and ring the bell, turn on those push notifications, and that way you can get notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, enough of that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your first listen here to start off your day. For the first time in quite a while, we have some newsworthy things to talk about on Locked On Blackhawks. It's been a quiet past few weeks, and even though the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase begins tomorrow with the Minnesota Wild, the Blackhawks still haven't released their official roster for that. Now, we've heard some whispers and we've seen some posts on social media suggesting who could be attending, but still nothing set in stone from the Blackhawks at this point, which is a little bit frustrating because I really wanted to break down the roster before the whole thing begins, but sounds like we won't know who all is officially attending this prospect showcase until tomorrow morning at the very earliest. But to kick things off here on the show today, folks, I wanted to begin by getting into some injury updates that we heard from the Chicago Blackhawks earlier this morning. And unfortunately, neither of the updates that we got was good news, as first, defenseman Jake McCabe, who's currently in the second year of the 4-year deal that he inked with the Blackhawks last offseason, 28-year-old defenseman Jake McCabe underwent cervical spine surgery recently and is expected to be out for at least 8 to 10 weeks, meaning that McCabe officially will not be ready by the season opener in a little under a month, and could be missing, the first 2 months potentially, could be out all the way until mid or late November. So definitely some tough news for Jake McCabe. His first year with the Blackhawks this past season was a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Kind of like Seth Jones, I thought both of them got off to slow starts, as did the Chicago Blackhawks, that dreadful first 7 or 8 games where they didn't even hold a lead. But once McCabe kind of got settled into the system and kind of, I think, got more comfortable with everything, he definitely played better in the second half of the season. And offensively, he actually put up career numbers, the highest point total that Jake McCabe has ever recorded in a season. And by the end of the year, it was starting to look more like the defenseman the Blackhawks and us fans thought we were getting when we first inked him in free agency. But yeah, this is definitely a tough blow for McCabe. And cervical spine surgery definitely sounds like something serious. So hopefully it's not just a speedy recovery for McCabe, but hopefully everything goes well and he'll be able to get back on the ice sooner rather than later to help make an impact on the defensive side for the Blackhawks. But now that McCabe isn't going to be ready for the season opener, it makes things a whole lot more interesting on the back end for the Blackhawks heading into training camp, because taking a look at the defensemen who will for sure be on the opening night roster, there's only 5 of them, I would say, at this point, and that's Seth and Caleb Jones, the Jones brothers. Then you can add Connor Murphy to that list, assuming that he's going to be back and healthy after missing the second half of the year or the last couple of months. Riley Stillman's going to be part of that NHL group probably full-time this season. And the Blackhawks also, of course, recently signed veteran defenseman Jack Johnson to a very team-friendly deal. And considering they were probably aware that surgery was a likelihood or was going to happen for McCabe sometime in the near future, it makes even more sense now as to why the Blackhawks decided to bring in another veteran like Johnson to add to the blue line. But now that there's only 5 defensemen at this point, hopefully all of those 5 will be able to stay healthy. But that certainly opens up the door for a couple more youngsters who are trying to make the team out of training camp, such as Ian Mitchell, who spent the entire year basically with the Rockford IceHogs, but looked really good in doing so, mostly playing a top pairing role for Rockford and playing in all scenarios. We also have Alec Regula and Alex Vlasic, both of which kind of shined towards the end of the season when they got those stints up with the Blackhawks. There's also Philip Rose, who, from what I saw at development camp, he's definitely physically mature and a little bit, I think, further down the development path than a lot of his peers at the defenseman position. So I wouldn't count him out of making the opening night roster either. And same with Jakub Galvis, someone who wasn't getting a lot of attention heading into camp this time last year, but really wound up pushing for an opening night spot. And because of all the experience that he has already at 23 years old, all the professional hockey under his belt, I wouldn't be surprised either to see Jakub Galvis wind up making the team, because it also wouldn't hurt to see Mitchell, Regula, and Vlasic, any of those 3 or multiples of those 3. It wouldn't hurt to give them more time down in Rockford. I think there's pros to both sides of the coin there. They could definitely, get some valuable experience at the NHL level, but playing for a Rockford team that's, a tight-knit group, most of the teams coming back from last year and are trying to make the Calder Cup playoffs once again, I also think that could be a beneficial situation for either of those 2, or for either of those 3, or basically anyone that's in this group too. Isaac Phillips, Nicholas Beaudin, who's kind of been a forgotten man. I think it's a really make or break type camp for Nicholas Beaudin, if I'm being honest. But definitely the door is now open a little bit more, with Jake McCabe expected to be out 8 to 10 weeks at the very least. An unfortunate situation for McCabe. Hopefully he'll be able to get back on the ice, as I already mentioned, sooner rather than later. But that's definitely a more intriguing storyline heading into training camp, with another spot having opened up on the Blackhawks blue line. The other announcement that the Blackhawks made in terms of injury news was forward Jalen Luypen, the 20-year-old 7th-round pick in the 2021 NHL draft. He also is going to be out for 3 to 4 months with a left rotator cuff injury. And Luypen had a really strong year for the WHL champion Edmonton Oil Kings, was nearly a point-per-game player for them in the regular season. He had 64 points in 66 games, kind of slowed down a little bit in the playoffs, but I was really happy with the Blackhawks' decision to give him an ELC, because especially prior to this year's NHL draft, where it was clear the front office knew they had to address the lack of depth at the forward position. Before that, Luypen really was one of the more intriguing prospects in the organization, and I think it's worth giving him a shot down in Rockford to see how he's going to progress. But interestingly enough, obviously now Luypen's going to miss a significant part of this upcoming season. According to the guys over at CHGO Blackhawks, Jay, Mario, and Greg, who do a fantastic job, they talked on their show today about how Luypen, his plan was to go back to the Tri-City Americans, who actually just acquired his rights from Edmonton in the WHL. And I kind of thought that Luypen would be turning pro after 4 years already in the WHL, but I guess his plan is to go back to Tri-City whenever he recovers from the surgery that he's going to have. And I guess Luypen tried to play through it, and just rehab didn't go as well as he had hoped, and now surgery is required for that injury. So a tough break there for Jalen Luypen. Hopefully when he gets back, he can still put together a strong second half for the Tri-City Americans. Got to figure that this is going to be his final year playing junior hockey. And then in 2023, 2024, I'd assume he'd join the Rockford Ice Hogs of the AHL. But yeah, tough break for Jalen Luypen, man. It's unfortunate that he's not going to be able to build off the really strong year that he had with Edmonton. So for both Jake McCabe and Jalen Luypen, I hope they each have speedy recoveries and are able to get back on the ice here sometime soon. All right, that takes care of the Blackhawks injury announcements from earlier this morning. Coming up in just a moment, I am also going to get into who we could see at the Blackhawks camps, both the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase and regular training camp here in the next couple of weeks. But first, I got to talk to you all about Athletic Greens and their new AG1 product. With just one scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and more to help you start your day. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your immune system, your nervous system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's truly an incredible product. And Athletic Greens was first created when the founder experienced a ton of gut issues themselves and ended up on a complicated supplement routine in order to recover. And that used to cost them over $100 per day. But now, Athletic Greens has created an optimal and affordable nutrition routine that will cost you less than $3 per day, which is such an easy and cheap way to invest in both your health and your body. And I'm not kidding, folks. I really do try and get my one scoop of AG1 every day. I had it this morning before I went to work, whether I, am doing a podcast early in the morning, or even if I'm going golfing with some of my friends, going to play roller hockey, I make sure to get my one scoop of AG1. It's as simple as taking a scoop and adding it to a cup of water, mixing it in. And I really do feel the difference in the morning. I feel more focused, locked and loaded, ready to go. And as someone who's competitive, I want to make sure I'm taking all the advantages that are given to me so I can have that edge up on my buddies or whoever the opponent may be that day, or whether it's just completing a podcast. I want to make sure I'm at my best, and Athletic Greens does the trick. And to make it easy for you all right now, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com, athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Visit it right now to take ownership over your health and to pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, segment 2. I also wanted to be sure to talk for a little bit today to give a little bit of a preview over who we can expect to see in the next couple of weeks at both the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, which, as I already referenced, starts tomorrow, and also at Blackhawks training camp, which presumably I'm thinking is going to begin the following week. So I already talked about this for the Tom Kurvers Showcase. Begins tomorrow morning, but we still don't know the official roster that the Blackhawks are going to roll with. And it's kind of frustrating because on social media today, Minnesota posted their complete roster. We saw that former first-round picks, Marco Rossi, he's going to be there. Jesper Wallstedt, who I had as the top goalie in the 2021 NHL draft, wound up going behind Sebastian Casa. He's going to be there. So is Carson Lambos, defenseman that Minnesota selected in the first round a couple years ago. So the Blackhawks are going to face off against some good prospects. Minnesota has a very good prospect pool. It's something I talked about not all that long ago when we first got wind of the Tom Kurvers prospect showcase. This is going to be, I think, a good experience for the Blackhawks young prospect group. And we're going to see what they're made of because they're going up against one of the deepest prospect pools in the entire NHL in the Minnesota Wild. Even without some young guns like Matt Boldy, he's not going to be there. They're not going to be without a couple of other young guys, but it's still going to be, I think, a really good test for this young Blackhawks group to kind of see where they're at and all that good jazz. But by the way, folks, for this Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, I did want to reiterate that this is going to be free and open to the public all week long. So if you have a day off this week from work on Wednesday, Thursday, be sure to come on down to Fifth Third Arena. And if you do work, don't worry, you're still going to be able to catch some of the action if you want to. The Blackhawks are having a scrimmage with the Minnesota Wild on Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Time at Fifth Third Arena. Your boy will be there for sure. And then also Saturday morning, there's going to be a practice from 10 to 12, I believe. It's either 12 to 2 or 10 to 12, but I believe it's the former. And then also on Sunday, I know football is going to be going on and makes it a little bit tougher to want to go check out a scrimmage hockey game between the Blackhawks and Wild prospects. But if you're interested, there is going to be another scrimmage held at 1 p.m. Central Time on Sunday. So lots of good opportunities to go and see the future of the Chicago Blackhawks organization. Again, it's free and open to the public. You can get an up and close view on a lot of future Blackhawks players, and hopefully I'll see a lot of you listeners down at Fifth Third Arena throughout the week. I really always enjoy getting an extra couple of looks at some of these Blackhawks prospects. But anyways, getting into the roster itself for the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, obviously only prospects are going to be attending this part, and I'd probably expect it to be pretty similar to the group that was here for development camp. What was that, a month or two ago now? I think if you weren't at development camp, if a player wasn't at development camp, we're probably not going to see them during this prospect showcase. So I don't think we're going to see Lucas Reichel. He's kind of past that point, I think. I don't think we're going to see Alec Regula. Wasn't there at development camp. I don't think we're going to see him. The intriguing one will be if Alex Vlasic is going to this prospect showcase, because he was there at development camp, but I think it was pretty clear that he was a little bit further along the path than most of his teammates that were there as well. Vlasic was just more physically mature, very poised with the puck, just kind of seemed to be a step ahead of everyone. So I wouldn't be shocked if Alex Vlasic doesn't attend the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see till tomorrow, because the Blackhawks seemingly aren't making any announcements. But for the most part, it sounds like that most of the Blackhawks prospects who are still playing junior hockey, those are the ones who are going to be in attendance for both the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase and for training camp the following week or whenever that's going to happen. Because for those players, those prospects that are taking part in college hockey, I think they're going to be sticking around with those camps, given that the NCAA season is just a couple of weeks away here. So unfortunately, it sounds like there are going to be some top prospects that are not going to be at the Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase or at camp for the Blackhawks the following week. The biggest one I would say is my boy Frank the Tank, Frankie Nazar, who actually there was just a post from University of Michigan's hockey team on Instagram that Frankie is going to be rocking number 91 this year for the Wolverines. It's going to be a loaded team, so I'm sure Frank is going to absolutely thrive with that quality of teammates surrounding him. I'm really excited to see the numbers that he's going to put up. Unfortunately, though, doesn't look like we're going to be seeing him at the Prospect Showcase or at training camp. And the first one on that, I got to give credit to Tab Bamford of Bleacher Nation Blackhawks for confirming that he won't be there, and neither will Aiden Thompson, someone who actually cracked my top 10 prospects list after a really solid performance at not only the Blackhawks prospect development camp, but also trying to make the World Juniors roster for Team USA. Before he suffered an injury, from all accounts, it sounded like Thompson was going to make that team. So he's really, his progression has been clear, and I was so impressed with what I saw from him at development camp. But unfortunately, it doesn't sound like we're going to be getting a look at him, as he's going to remain with the University of Denver as their season begins in just a couple of weeks. And I would expect, it sounds like all the college guys aren't going to be here. If that's the case, it means no Wyatt Kaiser for the University of Minnesota Duluth. Same with Dominic James, a 6th-round pick in this past year's draft, who's going to be a sophomore for the Bulldogs. There's Drew Commesso, who actually was just named an alternate captain for Boston University this year, as he's about to embark on his junior season. Commesso also came in at number 7 on my Blackhawks top 10 prospects list recently. Landon Slager, Ryder Rolston, they both are juniors for Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to be part of the Tom Kurvers prospect showcase. Ryan Green also, I forgot to mention, he's now going to be a teammate with Drew Commesso up at Boston University. Those types of players, it doesn't sound like they are going to be attending either of these camps. Now, it doesn't mean that all of them aren't officially going to be here. It just sounds like those type of players, with the NCAA season starting soon, it sounds like all of them, or most of them at the very least, will be staying at their college camps, unfortunately. All right, folks, coming up in just a moment, I will continue to get into the prospects that we do expect to see at camp, including 2022 first-round picks, Kevin Korchinski, and possibly Sam Rinzel. Welcome back to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Getting into segment 3 now, just carrying over from segment 2. Let's get into the group of players that we can expect to see in the next few weeks. First, nothing is set in stone here. I have to give credit to Wally from Chicago Prospects. He's been doing some great work today to kind of check up on a lot of top prospects for the Blackhawks and see if they are going to be attending camp. And it sounds like Kevin Korchinski, 7th overall pick in this past year's draft, Nolan Allen, the 32nd overall pick in the 2021 NHL draft, and Colton Dock, 2nd-round pick in the 2021 NHL draft. All three of those players, are expected to be taking parts in these camps. We got official word also that Paul Ludwinski, 39th overall selection in this year's draft, will be attending. Same with Gavin Hayes, 3rd-round pick this year's draft. Matthew Savoie, or I keep saying Matthew, Sammy Savoie. I'm going to get that right one of these times. I keep wanting to say Matthew, who is a 1st-round selection in this year's draft. Wish it was Matthew, but I honestly really do like Sam Savoie. What he brings, I don't know if the Blackhawks have another player like him in the prospect pool. Gritty, chippy. Sounds like he's going to be attending both camps. Ethan Del Mastro, captain for the Mississauga Steelheads, who had a really big year last year up in the OHL. Sounds like he's going to be there. So there is still going to be a lot of higher-end talent for the Blackhawks taking part in both the prospect showcase and also probably the early portion of training camp until they're inevitably sent back to their junior teams. I remember last year, Nolan Allen stuck around a pretty good amount of time before being sent back to the Prince Albert Raiders. Ethan Del Mastro got a really good look as well. Colton Dock was around for a good amount of time, so you can expect that to happen probably for Korchinski and Ludwinski, Hayes, and those guys. They'll be around for a couple of weeks just to kind of get a sense of what NHL training camp is going to be like and all that stuff. But it's really fun. It gives us fans definitely more exposure to what these players could potentially be one day down the road. And I know a lot of fans get ties to certain players and then want to keep up with them as they embark on their, junior seasons, college seasons, wherever it may be. It gets a lot of fans more enticed and connected with these players in particular, and that always makes for more of a fun situation when they do step onto the scene in the NHL level. So the prospects has always been one of my favorite things about following this hockey team. And funny enough, the Blackhawks haven't had a really good prospect pool basically since I've been covering the Blackhawks, but now that they're starting to add some names to this list here, I'm super intrigued. I know the season is probably not going to be good this year, but it's going to be fun keeping up with a lot of these new faces, and it should be a lot of fun seeing what they have in action when they go up against the Minnesota Wild's prospects later on this week as part of the 2022 Tom Kurvers Prospect Showcase. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Tuesday, September 13th episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks right now, wherever you get your podcasts, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And after the show, you got to be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast for all the latest news and updates throughout the NHL offseason. It's free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go and check out Locked On NHL right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, thank you all for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And for any questions at all regarding anything related to the show or to the Blackhawks, feel free to email LockedOnBlackhawks, all one word, LockedOnBlackhawks@gmail.com, or you can also hit me up on any one of my Twitter accounts. So until tomorrow's episode, thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.